Good day, Professor Manyak Dr. Mukris. My name is Tan Jun Yu and my matching number is 299786. Today I will be presenting my research entitled Factor Influencing Student Preference for Online Learning in University Utara Malaysia. This presentation will cover Chapter 1 until Chapter 5 with a stronger focus on clearly explaining the data finding. Online learning is now everywhere, especially after COVID-19. However, an important question remains: do students actually prefer online learning, and if yes, why? Some students enjoy flexibility and cost saving, but others feel isolated, tired, or less motivated. If universities do not clearly understand this preference, investment in online education may not achieve their intended outcome. Many students are attracted to online learning because it offers flexibility in time and location, easy access to learning material, record lecture, and cost saving. Globally, studies show strong acceptance of online learning. However, despite this advantage, student preferences are not consistent. Many students still prefer face-to-face or hybrid learning environment. In Malaysia, online learning became widespread during the COVID-19 pandemic. Universities, including UM, was forced to move quickly to online platform to ensure continuity of education. This shift aligned with national policies such as DEPAN 2.0, which emphasize digital readiness. However, as Malaysian transitions into the post-pandemic period, it is important to evaluate whether online learning is genuinely preferred by students rather than simply being improved. Despite heavy advancement in online learning systems, student acceptance remains uneven. Some students value flexibility and convenience, while others experience long liners, screen fatigue, and lack of motivation. This shows that technology alone is not enough. Student decisions are influenced not only by infrastructure but also by physiological and economic considerations are often overlooked. Most previous studies focus on technological readiness or certification level. However, they often assume that students make purely rational decisions. In reality, students are influenced by perceived value, mental effort, habit, and peer environment. Therefore, this study fills the gap by combining consumer theory, demand theory, and behavioral economics. Based on this gap, the study examines whether gender and financial background influence student perception, and whether utility, price, and network externality affect students' preference for online learning. This chapter reviews past literature and relevant economic theories related to student preference for online learning. The purpose is to establish a theoretical and empirical foundation for the study by examining key concepts, previous research findings, and the relationship between variables. The chapter is mainly grounded in three theory: consumer theory, demand theory, and network externality theory. This theory explains how students evaluate online learning based on utility, cost, and peer influence. Together, they provide a structured framework to understand students' decision-making and form the basis for developing the research hypothesis. According to consumer theory, students act as rational consumers who aim to maximize utility, flexibility, convenience, and ease of access increase the perceived usefulness for online learning, while non-financial factors such as motivation, lecture interaction, and digital readiness also influence satisfaction. Then demand theory explains that lower costs increase demand for online learning, especially among lower income students who are more price sensitive. Saving in transportation and accommodation reflect income and substitution effect. Network externality theory highlight the role of peer participation. Active interaction enhance learning satisfaction, while poor engagement and system congestion reduce the attractiveness of online learning. Based on literature and theoretical discussion, this chapter developed the research hypothesis. The study examined whether gender difference influence perception of utility, price, network externality, and demand for online learning. It also investigates whether student primary source of financial support affect this factor. Finally, the study tests the relationship between utility, price, and network externality and student demand for online learning at University Utara Malaysia. A quantitative approach is suitable because the aim of this study is to measure students' perception numerically and test relationship between variables using statistical methods rather than exploring individual opinion in depth. The study is cross-sectional, meaning the data will collect at one point in time. The population of this study consists of undergraduate students at University Utara Malaysia, as they have experienced online learning, especially during and after the COVID-19 period. A total of 150 students participate in the survey. Conveniently, sampling was used due to accessibility and time constraints. Data were collected using a structural questionnaire distributed through Google Form. The questionnaire consists of 5 sections. Section A collects demographic information such as gender, year of study, college, monthly allowance, and primary source of financial support. Section B, C, and D measure the independent variables, which are network externality factor, price factor, and utility factor. Section E measures demand for online learning, which represents student overall preference and willingness to engage in online learning. All items were measured using a 5-point Likert scale, ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. The Likert scale allows respondents to express different levels of agreement, making the data suitable for statistical analysis. Now I will move on to chapter 4, which is the most important part of this study. The study analyzed the data collected from 150 UUM students and applies several statistical techniques to test the research hypothesis. In this study, 58% of respondents were male and 42% were female, which show a relative balanced gender distribution. Most respondents were Year 3 students, indicating that they have sufficient experience with university learning and online platforms. The majority of respondents were from the College of Business and most rely on PTPTN as their primary resource of financial support. The majority of respondents have monthly allowance with 500 ringgit until 999 ringgit. Students receiving support from JPA, part-time job, and Core Foundation were grouped under others. This was done due to small sample size to improve the reliability of ANOVA analysis. Descriptive statistics include mean and standard deviation, where the mean represents the average perception of respondents. All 4 variables record mean value above 3.7, which indicate that students generally have moderately positive attitude toward online learning. Among the variables, utility factor record the highest mean, suggesting that students place strong importance on usefulness, flexibility, and convenience. Price factor record the lowest mean, indicating that although online learning can save costs, financial concerns such as internet and device expenses still matter. Independent sample t-tests were conducted to examine gender difference. The results show no significant difference between male and female students across all factors. This suggests that gender does not influence student perception of online learning at UUM. It is important to note that t-tests and ANOVA will not conduct for demand for online learning. This is because demand for online learning factor is treated as the dependent variable. Instead, multiple regression analysis was used to examine how utility, price, and network externality influence demand. This table summarizes the one-way ANOVA result, examining whether students with different primary sources of financial support perceive online learning differently. First, for the network externality factor, the F value is 2.467 with a p-value of 0.064, which is significant at the 10% level. This indicates that students' perception of peer influence and system usage differ depending on their financial background. However, for both price factor and utility factor, the p-value are greater than 0.10. This means that there are no significant difference across financial support groups. In other words, regardless of whether students are supported by parents, PTPTN, or MARA, they generally share similar views on affordability and usefulness of online learning. Overall, financial background mainly affect peer-related experience, but not how useful or costly students perceive online learning to be. The network externality factor has a positive coefficient indicating that peer participation and network size may increase demand. However, its effect is not statistically significant at the 10% level. This suggests that network effects alone do not strongly influence student demand. Possibly, because students prioritize individual cost-benefit consideration over peer influence. Second, the price factor has a positive and statistically significant effect on demand. This implies that students are more likely to adopt online learning when it is perceived as affordable or provide good value for money. Third, the utility factor show that the stronger positive and significant impact on demand. This indicates that students' demand for online learning increase when they perceive it as useful, effective, and beneficial to their academic performance. Overall, the model explains 74.7% of the variation in students' demand for online learning. The ANOVA result confirmed that the regression model is statistically significant, indicating a good overall fit. Chapter 5 discusses the findings of the study and link them to the research objective. The main aim is to examine how network externality, price and utility factors influence students' preference and demand for online learning at University Utara Malaysia using data collected from undergraduate students and analyzed through SPSS. The study evaluates the role of gender, primary source of financial support, and student preference in shaping their view toward online learning. The findings show that gender does not significantly influence students' perception of online learning, as both male and female students evaluate it similarly. However, financial background matters. Students receiving financial aid are more sensitive to cost, while those supported by parents prioritize convenience and effectiveness. Overall, students' preference and demand for online learning are mainly driven by utility and price factor, while network externality has a weaker influence. In terms of implication, universities should improve the usefulness of online learning platform and reduce cost barrier, especially for financially support students. Lecturers also play an important role through engaging and interactive teaching. This study is limited to one university and use self-report data. Future research could include more institutions and variables. In conclusion, utility and price are the key determinants of online learning demand at UUM, while network externality plays a minor role. Thank you.